I'm Doug Shackelford, the Dean of UNC Kenan-Flagler, and we're just going to jump right into it. I know you're here to hear from Michele Buck. A little bit of her background. She's the chairman of the board. She's the president and CEO of the Hershey Company, and she's an alumni of our MBA program here at Kenan-Flagler. With that introduction, which is not nearly adequate, but to save us plenty of time, we're just going to jump right into our questions. So welcome back home to Chapel Hill, at least in a virtual sense, Michele, and it's wonderful to have you here.
Thank you. I'm delighted to be here.
So I know you've had an illustrious career, and I know you also didn't start in the position you're in. I'd like just a little bit of your own personal journey. When you left Chapel Hill, where did you first go? And tell us a little bit about how things developed from there.
Sure. So first I'd start off by saying growing up in central Pennsylvania, of rather modest means, I never envisioned that I'd be sitting in the chair that I am today. But I feel that I've had a very fortunate and enjoyable journey. So, I went to undergrad here in Pennsylvania at one of the state schools. I worked in state government before coming to Kenan-Flagler. Had a great experience at Kenan, both in terms of what I learned, but also really selected it based on not only the premier academic career, but also the culture and that team orientation that the school is known for. I chose to focus my career in marketing at the beginning. So my first job coming out of Kenan-Flagler was as an assistant brand manager at Frito-Lay. And it was a great role because I learned so many things foundationally that shaped every decision that I made after that. So first of all, I had been offered a job at another company that was a bit smaller. But I thought for my career and managing my career, I could always go smaller, but it would be hard for me to go bigger. So I chose to go with the bigger company because I thought it would give me more flexibility. Brand management was an excellent career because not only was I learning how to be a marketing expert, but as the brand manager, you really are the general manager. And so you manage and work with other functions and you have responsibility for a P&L. And for everyone, but especially for women, that is absolutely critical. Then as I progressed throughout my career, I guess you would really say my career was a tour of the blue chip consumer packaged goods companies. And I worked at Frito-Lay, at Kraft, Nabisco, and then Hershey. And my career really followed taking bigger marketing roles and also then shifting into true general management jobs and then going to really big marketing roles and then over to other general management jobs. And that's really how I grew to ultimately become the global chief marketing officer here, the president of our US business, which is our biggest business, the chief operating officer, and then ultimately CEO. As I look at that journey, I guess one thing I would share is there are a few key things that I think were critically important for me along the way. So one was I always learned the most in roles that took me outside my comfort zone. So, the first time I had an opportunity to go into a true general management job where I was going to really have sales reporting to me, finance. I actually had a manufacturing plant report to me. It was a manufacturing plant that was not operating well. It was considered to be shut down. The Teamsters Union were there. It was, everything you could imagine that would be intimidating and daunting. And I had never managed anything in operations. And one of my mentors in the company said to me, listen, you have a lot of great leadership skills. If you can use those skills, you will use other people to fill in the technical knowledge. And it was so far from my comfort zone, but I would say it was one of those jobs from which both I learned so much, but I also really kind of made a mark in my career that set me on the track for other really great opportunities going forward. And in fact, I think I had one of the biggest people impacts. The workers at the plant, we were able to turn around the manufacturing plant, and the workers actually made me a plaque, the greatest award I was ever given in my career, that said, congratulations on your promotion, our loss is their gain, hand embroidered by the wives of the employees. So it was just such a meaningful experience. But every time I took a job outside the comfort zone, the learning was really, really great. The other thing I would say is the importance of fit and culture. I mentioned the cultural fit for me in choosing Kenan-Flagler. As I worked at different companies, I started to realize there were some places that were okay fits. There were some places that were great fits, and there were some places that frankly were not good fits. In fact, I had one job I left after about 1.5 years, and I really think I would have been fired if I hadn't left, because I was so much not what they valued. And I went to other environments where I was exactly what they valued. And that learning, I think, is key for everyone. You can be average one place and you can be a superstar somewhere else. The other thing I kind of look back on is during all of this, I was also becoming a mom. So I have 3 kids. I had my first at 37. I actually had my last at 45. I affectionately call my midlife crisis baby. But during that, I learned a lot just about managing my career, and that I needed to tell people what I needed to make my life work for me. And at the beginning, I was very tentative about doing that. And as I grew in my career, I became bolder and, a better self-advocate. And I would recommend to everybody, whether you're a man or a woman, that you achieve, you figure out what's going to make your life work. Because if you're a good employee and you deliver, your employer will want to help you do that. They will not view it as a burden. So that's a little bit about how I got to where I was. I guess I would say, the other thing I look back on is people talk a lot about mentors, and I actually talk a lot about advocates. I was very fortunate to have several people along my career journey who were passionate advocates for me. They saw something in me that I hadn't yet seen in myself, or that I didn't yet quite have a lot of confidence in. And they encouraged me to take certain opportunities. They encouraged me to really focus and point out to me where I really flourished. They advocated for me to get some roles that frankly were stretch assignments. And they took a real personal interest in me, and that always carried with me. And it's something that I have considered that I want to do for others. And I have felt it's been important for me to do that very same thing. And I have numerous relationships with people where I have done that. And I'll just call one out, which is right now on my leadership team at the Hershey Company. On my team of 10 is Kristen Riggs, who's a 2005 UNC Kenan-Flagler MBA. She started here in 2005. So I knew her when she first came. She and I both came at the same time, though I had been in business for quite some time by the time she came. But she's one example of somebody who I've tried to advocate for, because she's amazingly smart, accomplished, commercially minded. And, by having an advocate, it can just help you to navigate your career path, and also to have somebody who's willing to give you a shot and believes in you.
Oh, you hit on so many great topics there. I love that about advocates. I don't think I've ever talked to anyone who's been successful who can't look back and say, there were people identifying things in me that I couldn't see, but they gave me enough of a boost of confidence that I started stepping in that direction, and they were right. And I probably never would have even tried if they hadn't said, you can do that.
I totally agree. Couldn't agree with you more. It made the difference in my career.
Absolutely. Something I should have said to our audience is, I know you got questions. So send some questions. I'm not going to dominate all the time asking the questions. So we've got a Q&A. Send your questions along, and we'll have some time to ask those in a moment. But I am going to seize the floor for a few questions.
Sure.
So the last year has been traumatic for all of us. The world's been turned upside down. Talk to me a little bit about what that's been like for you at the Hershey Company, what it's been like personally and professionally and for the company. And what I'm now asking everybody is, so what do we take from what we've learned and carry it forward into the future? And as we kind of hopefully are leaving this period that I don't think any of us would have volunteered to go through, but it's certainly been an experience for the ages.
Yeah, absolutely. So first of all, let me start by saying, of course, this past year has been just a tremendous tragedy for the world. And so that is so tremendously unfortunate in terms of the people who lost their lives or who became dramatically ill. At the same time, I would say from from a personal perspective, from a business perspective, it's been a year of incredible learning in so many ways. So I look back at the year, and as I talk to my board about the business as we close the year, I'll start there and I'll talk a little bit about the personal piece too. But wow, it was a real test of leadership.
Yeah.
And for me, it was learning about the true power of leadership. And I say that after more than 30 years of being, a leader, but I learned so much. When that crisis hit and within a 2-week period of time, the world changed, I had to quickly gather my leadership team together, and I had just made several changes. So I had a lot of people who were new in their roles, and they were still learning their roles, let alone operate a business where our world was turned upside down. And we had to quickly figure out, what are we going to do? We have retail sales folks who are in and out of grocery stores every day. Do we keep them there? We have manufacturing facilities. We have frontline workers. We had decisions to make in early April. Halloween is 10% of our business. And at that time, the government, shut down restaurants. Nobody's traveling. They were telling people don't go to grocery stores. And we were trying to decide, do we produce, a couple $1 billion worth of product? Is anybody going to buy it, or is there going to be no trick or treat? So early on, we said, okay, we need some principles. Our first focus is, it's all about the well-being of our employees. And that is their safety, their physical safety, their emotional well-being, and their economic well-being. And we are going to focus on all of that. Secondly, to manage our business and to keep this business alive for our employees, we're going to focus on safely making and selling product, because that's job one. Is, our categories are more than just candy that people enjoy. Most of our brands and products play this emotional role in consumers' lives, where they're associated with traditions, like filling an Easter basket, or everybody has a story of a grandparent or a parent who gave them their first Hershey bar and what that was all about. And, we actually decided to, as our third principle, lean in, because what we saw was, we believed consumers were going to be looking for normalcy. So their lives are turned upside down. How do you give them some emotional comfort? And we as a company are all about making more moments of goodness. And so how can we continue to do that? And that guiding force, that purpose of how we could help people in some small way, became a real driving force. And so we made the decision to lean in. We said, we're going to build trick or treat. We're going to build Halloween. We're going to focus with retailers on that. We got all on top of understanding consumers on a daily basis. And we had to shift our entire focus on our portfolio, which was about single candy bars that people pick up when they're out and about, to people are staying home. They're watching movies. Well, guess what? Twizzlers is perfect for watching movies. People are being told to be with their close family or close friends and be outside. S'mores as an activity. So we shifted all of our spending. We shifted all of our focus on our portfolio. And we actually ended the year gaining almost 200 basis points of market share, because we were one of the first to make our plants safe for our people. We constantly communicated for care and concern. We had call lists where we would call people, and it wasn't about the business. It was to say, how are you doing? Like, what's going on in your life? How can we help you? And if we figured if they were okay, the business would come. We ended the year doubling our net promoter score, because we so engaged our people in how much we cared about them and how we could give back to society in some small way. We shipped so much product to hospitals and medical workers around the country to put smiles on their faces at a time when, they were facing the most grim circumstances. So it was a tremendous year of learning relative to the power of leadership and making the right decisions, and what a difference that can make. Because we are now, unfortunately with all the circumstances, but on the positive side, we're on a positive trajectory on our business. And we advanced our culture relative to being agile and leaning in to take risks in a way we never could have. Like, we accelerated our progress in e-commerce in a way we never could have, except that when you're faced with a crisis, you do what you have to do. So business-wise, great learning. Personally, clearly it was a tough year. I think emotionally it was tough. I felt the weight of the responsibility for all of our employees, and that every decision I made impacted their safety. It impacted whether they were going to have a job and be able to take care of their families. And so from a personal perspective, in addition to taking care of family, obviously it was a tough year. In terms of what, I take all those things away. And I guess what I kind of take away is, wow, when you put your mind to it, anything really is possible. And it's a shame that it takes a crisis to sometimes realize some of that. I take away that people are capable of so much more than you sometimes believe they are. When I look at what our organization was able to accomplish last year. And then I take away some of the ways that consumers are going to change and that people are going to change. And probably the biggest one is work is never going to be the same. People are never going to come back 100% to the office. Yeah. In our survey, and I heard that this is similar in the industry, most people say they want about 60%, they want a hybrid workforce. So they want about 60% of their time to be in the office and about 40% to be at home, right in that 50-50, 60-40 camp. And all of us as employers are going to have to figure out how we make that work for people and how we fundamentally change the way we work. Yeah. On top of that, I think there are other changes. Certainly, I think people are going to spend a little more time at home. While travel will come back, I don't think it's going to be quite the same that it was. Home cocooning, shopping online. We accelerated the percent of people shopping online significantly to where most of us thought it would be in 3 to 5 years. It is there now. That's here to stay. But a lot of great learnings.
Well, I'm getting questions flooding in already, Michele. So I'm gonna pick up one of those questions, which follows up on what you were just saying. So how are you guys thinking about your flexible work schedule at Hershey? What are you doing? I mean, you and I grew up in a world in which you get up on Monday morning, you come to work and you work until you go home and you do it again on Tuesday. What is it going to look like 2 years from now, a year from now?
Yeah, I think the way it will work is that we will have every day at the office, maybe 50% of our employees will be at the office that day. And we will be operating similar to how we are now relative to when we have a meeting. There will be some people in the office together for the meeting, and there will be some people at other locations, whether those are at their home, 10 minutes away from the office, which is where I think most of them will be. I think there will be more people working truly remotely. Like we have a few people now who maybe live in Chicago or live in Philadelphia, have a 2-hour commute or whatever, who don't come in every day. But I think most of it will be people balancing and still being close by. I think one of the challenges we're trying to consider is, given the power of culture, how can you keep that culture if you're not side by side? And I think if we can get to a 50% range where 50% of the time most people are in the office, I think that's probably enough to continue to build some of the informal aspects of culture. The water cooler discussion where you bump into somebody in the hall and you weren't meaning to have a business conversation, but you just get into it, and you don't want to lose that piece. But I do think it's going to look like that. We're working on it, so I don't have every answer, but we envision that's what people expect. And, there was an article, I'm trying to think what it was in, if it was in the New York Times yesterday, it was in one major publication saying people will resign if they don't have, most people will choose to change jobs if they are not given that kind of flexibility. And so I think that's what it's going to look like. And as I talk to a lot of, fellow CEOs in the industry, people are preparing for that reality.
Yeah, we're doing the same thing at the university. I don't think you're going to be a competitor employee if you say, oh no, this is the way the world's going to be. Your good people are going to walk across the street.
Yes.
I've got one more question and then we'll just totally turn it over to the audience. And I'm sure you hear this all the time, but you're in a distinct and unfortunate minority of CEOs, Fortune 50 or Fortune 500 companies, and that you're a woman. And we've got a lot of women here in our both undergraduate and MBA programs. What do you say to young women who want to be corporate executives, but they look and the further you go up, the thinner and thinner the ranks get for women leaders like yourself?
So I would say, be confident that you can make it happen, because you can. I think that I look back on my career and say, yeah, when I looked up, there were even fewer women, at the, 30 some years ago when I first entered the workforce. But, I found I had a lot of support along the way. There were a ton of men who had daughters who said, one day my daughter's going to be in this position and I want to help. There were, I would say, a lot of advocates who were men, because there weren't as many women, in the workforce. So I think you will find that people will want to help and support you along the way. I think what you need to do is focus on making an impact, because, business results are hard to argue with. And so, if you deliver, you can succeed. Focus on making that impact. And I would say, make sure you do advocate for yourself. One of the things that I didn't do as well early in my career was advocating, being really assertive. And later in my career, there were times where I remember going to one of my bosses and saying, hey, you have a board meeting coming up and this guy was going to present the material. You know what? We worked on it together and I actually drove most of it. I think I should be the one presenting. I don't think people do anything consciously trying to hinder you. But I do think, being your own advocate is also really important. Same things I talked about earlier relative to push yourself into experiences that take you outside your comfort zone, that give you an opportunity to show your breadth, to show resourcefulness, to show that, that you're a leader. I always say, trust your gut in every decision you make. I would say be very cognizant of cultural fit, because you will be more successful in those kind of environments. Claim your successes, but be confident that it can happen. I have seen a number of highly, highly successful, there are a ton of highly successful women out there. I will say, sadly, there are still a lot of women who opt out on their own too. And so I kind of encourage women not to look at it and say the reason there aren't more women is only because it's tougher for women. There are some women, frankly, who make that choice, more women who make that choice than men still. And so if it's something you want, it can be done. The workplace has never been more accepting of work-life balance and flexibility and integration. And I think the pandemic only accelerated that.
We've got some questions here about sustainability, about commitments that Hershey has made about environmental issues. Talk to us a little bit about the importance of that. And we've got a question here about, and how was that affected by the pandemic?
Yeah, so, corporate social responsibility, sustainability have always been a part of Hershey's DNA. Our company was founded by Milton Hershey, an entrepreneur who had a vision to make chocolate affordable to the masses. And when he passed away, he had no children, and he left the greatest philanthropic gift of all, which was he left the company in a trust to perpetually fund a school for disadvantaged kids. And today, 30% of our ownership is that trust. 30% of our dividends go to that school. So we have in our DNA this giving back philosophy. In fact, Milton Hershey used to say, doing well by doing good, while doing good. Environment is one of those key planks. And even Milton Hershey at the time was doing things ahead of his time. But we did make several commitments. And frankly, our approach to environmental is it's about continuous improvement. So, we started a lot of our work with ingredient sourcing within our supply chain, and all of those ingredients being sourced sustainably. That was one of the biggest places we thought we could make an impact. We recently achieved 100% certified cocoa. Cocoa is one of our biggest ingredients. We have commitments to deforestation, 100% palm oil, et cetera. And then we kind of move and broaden our agenda to other areas of environmental. So we've long been focused on investments in renewable energy and land use, zero waste to landfill, We are targeting for 100% of our plastic to be recyclable, reusable, or compostable. And we recently did some really great work on environmentally science-based targets. And that's been some of our biggest work recently. So we just view this as it is critically important for the climate. It is something that we expect of ourselves by being a good corporate citizen. And it's something that, frankly, the investment community at this point takes very seriously, and so do consumers.
Yeah, I think that shift in the investment community has been very dramatic and has been very interesting to watch of late.
I agree. I would say in the past, there were many times where they weren't interested, and now they really are. So I actually think that's helping to create some momentum in the industry behind the effort.
Exactly. Got a question here in which someone said, so help give me some criteria to figure out what a good cultural fit is.
So I would say, I think about it as what is valued in the environment. So I'll give some examples of things that I focus on. There are some environments that I would say are very people focused. Very much important is how you treat people. And frankly, there are some environments where that is not quite as important. It's a little bit more about, it's the bottom line, it's the results, it's the initiatives. And if the initiatives happen and there are dead bodies along the way, that's okay. And frankly, I worked in some of those. So I worked in one place where, I kid you not, there were leaders who would scream and shut doors and actually throw shoes across the room. So I would say, there's that's one aspect. There's an aspect around change and disruption. So I worked in an environment, as an example, at one point where everybody in this group had always been in this group, and they very strongly believed that they had mastered perfection in how they did everything. They weren't very open when I would look at things and say, I don't think we're doing this the best way. I think we should consider doing it differently. And the response kind of was, well, this is how we do it. This is how we've always do it. So if you're somebody who really believes in continuous improvement and change, you have to be in an environment where that's important. If you think about really large companies, there's an element of order and a little bit of bureaucracy that has to be there to manage in a huge mega, $50, $100 billion company that doesn't have to exist in a $5 to $10 billion company. And so if you're somebody who loves order and process, and that's a big piece of what you like to do, being in that environment versus if you're somebody who really wants to fly a little bit more by the seat of your pants, a lot of times an entrepreneurial environment can be better for you. So those are just a couple examples of, different polarities that you can think about. But what I always find is once you get into a culture, you can see where your fit is. Like you can just feel like, yes, this is right. Or, I'm okay here, but I'm not like the perfect fit,
Question about food security. I know I've talked to executives in the food industry before, and they tell me the thing that causes them to toss and turn in the middle of the night is, so what happens if there's a breakdown in the food processing plant in the other side of the world and people get sick and people die and that sort of thing? Is this something at Hershey that you guys think a lot about? I know you're producing your products all around the world.
Absolutely. So food safety is job one. So as we look at our manufacturing environment, food safety is everything. And fortunately, we consider ourselves and are viewed, I think, by the FDA as very good. In fact, I recently spoke to them as a result of some of their admiration for us, but very good on a food safety perspective. We invest a lot in that. We take all the appropriate steps, never shortcutting. No matter where we are producing food, we have the right quality standards, the right checks and balances. So it is always on our minds. I feel pretty confident. So, you can never say never, and you never know what's going to happen. But, we certainly put a huge focus on it. I would also say that we are fortunate in that there are some industries that can be more prone to really serious, as in deadly, food type issues, whether that's dairy and salmonella or meat, some types of categories that, tend to have more severe, not to say that can't happen anywhere, but we're fortunate that our category is not as prone to those types of issues, but it is definitely job one for us.
A question here about consumer taste are always changing. And
Yes.
there's at least talk of, people want healthier foods, these sorts of things. How do you think about that at a place that, I can't resist a Hershey Kiss. I'll be honest with you. So I have to limit my my contact with them.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. Yeah. Love to have a great consumer. No, I hear you. Hey, we are all about listening to consumers and adapting to what consumers are looking for, because their tastes are always changing, where they're shopping is always changing, and we just need to constantly pivot. So here's how we think about our business. We are actually the #2 snacking manufacturer in the US behind Frito-Lay, because we are #1 in confection, and confection is the second biggest category to salty. So we view ourselves as competing in broad snacking. All of our capabilities, whether it's taste science, ubiquitous distribution, anything, consumer insights around understanding how consumers snack throughout the day, all of those things are transferable. We've always approached our confection business relative to understanding it in the context of all snacking. So our strategy is to increase the number of snacking occasions for which we have offerings for consumers. So a lot of our portfolio goes pretty deep into treats and indulgences. And certainly within that piece of the portfolio, we offer a lot of portion control. You can get a Hershey Kiss that's 25 calories, or you can get a super king size Reese that, is many, many more calories than that. So we try and offer choice. We're always very transparent. And then we also are expanding our portfolio. So in recent years, we purchased Skinny Pop popcorn. We purchased Pirate's Booty. We purchased One Nutrition Bar. So we're also expanding our portfolio to participate in other occasions for consumers, so that when they want a sweet treat, we've got it. If they want something better for you, we've got it. If they want a snack that's more appropriate for the morning. So we're doing some tests on some morning snacks versus a lot of our products are eaten later in the day. So I view it as an opportunity to really capture more snacking.
And I think we've got time probably for one more question. And this one is about AI, data analytics, all the emerging technologies on the data science side. How are you guys using that at Hershey?
So we have always been a pretty data and analytics focused company. And I view that right now as one of the biggest capabilities that we are accelerating, that will provide accelerated growth on the top line and also on the bottom line. So we have a big focus around our digital transformation, which includes everything from further plant automation to significantly advanced media targeting, where we are now more than 60% digital marketing. We now target our media down to the consumer level. We target it at a zip code level. We will do things like during a season like Halloween, we can see how much of the Halloween product has sold through, or Easter product has sold through. And we can go to the zip code level, and where there's more product on the floor that hasn't sold through, we can heavy up media in those locations. We actually use data and analytics during COVID, and where COVID case counts were rising, we saw that s'mores ingredients sales were going up because people were doing that behavior. We used data and analytics when COVID hit on the case counts in our supply chain. We actually mapped all of our ingredient suppliers, all of our distribution centers, et cetera, by the trajectory of COVID cases, so that we could get ahead of seeing where were we going to have a problem where we weren't going to be able to get an ingredient, so we could get ahead of that. So it is a critical part of our agenda. We are making tremendous progress. We have partnered with some kind of startup companies to help integrate a lot of external data sources into our internal data sources. So it's a big enabler and a huge opportunity.
Well, Michele, we got a late start, but we covered a lot of territory in a short time. So I can't tell you how much I appreciate you joining us and sharing your insights and your expertise. I think our audience would quickly recognize that Michele embodies exactly the attributes that we would aspire for all of our graduates to have and attain. Truly our core values of excellence, leadership, integrity, inclusion, community, and teamwork. I was particularly pleased when you mentioned right at the very beginning the cultural things around teams. That's obviously very, very important to us and has been for a long time. It's been a delight having you. Come back to Kenan-Flagler even if in this day and age we can't have you physically here, but we look forward to having you back physically soon.
Thank you so much. I enjoyed it.
Thank you. For our audience, thank you for joining us. Thank you for your questions. Mark your calendars for our next Dean Speaker Series, which will be on the 14th of this month. We're going to hear from Jason Liberty. Jason's another of our alums. He is the current CFO and Group Executive Vice President for Royal Caribbean. I can tell you he's got a fascinating story about living through COVID, as you might imagine, at a cruise ship company. To register for his talk and the upcoming Dean Speaker Series, it's kenaninstitute.unc.edu/events. It's been great having everyone join us. And once again, I thank Michele Buck from the Hershey Company for being our special guest today. Thank you, everyone, and have a wonderful afternoon.